All right, time to go to Canberra now. Domestic politics for our debate live between the Liberal Party's Tony Smith and Labor Senator Doug Cameron. Gentlemen, thanks for being there. I'll tell you what, I've been watching you during some of the packages. The body language is brilliant. You're kindred spirits ideologically, I think, you two. Let's see if we can bring you together. I've got a sneaking suspicion it's not going to happen. Let me start with you if I can, right. Tony Smith. I have been, if you like, in disagreement with Labor about the need for Arthur Sinodinos to step aside. But I think that the Prime Minister today, in question time as well as yesterday, it's just not good enough, surely, for him to just refuse to answer questions on the floor of the House. He's stonewalling rather than treating Parliament the way that people would like it to be, wouldn't you say?
No, I completely agree with his approach today, which is that any questions and any judgments are properly put before ICAC. That's going to occur. It's going to occur.
But the questions are about his dealings and what he knew from what Arthur Sinodinos told him, not anything that Arthur Sinodinos had to do in his business dealings. It was Bill Shorten trying to establish what the Prime Minister knew and when, but he just refused to answer.
Well, Bill Shorten was doing his sort of Woodward and Bernstein impersonation, and that's what oppositions do. But as the Prime Minister pointed out, it is right and proper that the questions and all of the issues be dealt with at ICAC, and that's going to happen in the not too distant future. Now, having said that, Peter, of course, Labor will take every opportunity they can to talk about this issue, but it'll be before ICAC. Arthur will be a witness, and I think that his action in stepping aside was, of course, the right and proper thing to do. I've known him a long time. He's a person of incredible integrity. I've known him for the best part of 20 years.
Well, I don't disagree with any of that, but I just don't think he should have stepped aside. Doug Cameron, let me bring you in on this. Whilst I'm not impressed by the Prime Minister's unwillingness to answer pretty simple questions about what he knew, by the same token, what's Labor doing hounding someone to step aside before we even know whether there's any wrongdoing that's been engaged in? At this stage, as Tony Smith says, he's just been called as a witness.
Well, what you have to do is go back to the opening day of ICAC and have a look at the transcript of the counsel assisting ICAC, where he says clearly that a number of senior politicians were not persons of interest, but that Senator Sinodinos was under ongoing scrutiny. So that's a much different position. And it's quite clear that most people, when they end up in ICAC as a witness, they're told they are not persons of interest, or people are cleared, so that there's no problem with their position publicly. That's not the case with Arthur Sinodinos.
Well, isn't that a bit concerning? This question to both of you, gentlemen, isn't just even that approach by ICAC put Arthur Sinodinos to one side, put aside anyone else, frankly, that has appeared before ICAC? What are we doing in a democracy like ours with a hundreds of years history of links to the quality rule of law that came from Britain, having a scenario where we've got a virtual star chamber that can make those sort of aspersions against people's character before all the evidence is in? Tony Smith?
Well, I heard you the other night, Peter. I was having a bite to eat during the dinner break, and I heard you really making this point. I mean, it is what it is in New South Wales. They've been the rules of how it operates. As a Victorian, I can't really comment on it. We've just established...
Yours isn't much better in Victoria. It's up in Queensland, where the Fitzgerald report decided that they didn't want to go there. You know, they had a Royal Commission-style power. They thought that permanency of something of the order of ICAC or the Crime Commission over in Western Australia was a bad thing.
Is that right? That's... Doug, you're uncharacteristically quiet.
No, I'm just waiting for you to finish.
Oh, okay. Well,
let me bring you in as well, Doug. Maybe I can bring you two together. Star chambers surely have no place. I mean, they can bug people without normal warrant procedures. They can question witnesses without giving them warning on where they're looking to go. It just strikes me that it doesn't matter what you think about Arthur Sinodinos or what you think of even some of the further-ended issues where there have been accusations of wrongdoing, like an Eddie OB, that are quite clear already. Ultimately, a star chamber is just something that's anathema to democracy, in my opinion. I would have thought you'd both agree on that.
Look, I think if you try to remove ICAC, or any politician said that ICAC should go, I think given the situation in New South Wales over a number of years, I don't think that that would have any credibility. How the ICAC is formed, how people are cross-examined, is a matter that is in legislation and a matter for the Commissioner. I know that when I was a witness at ICAC, I was pleased to get out of the place. I must say it's not a very good place to be. And I'm glad that ICAC, the Commissioner IP, said that I was an impressive and honest witness. And I'm sure Arthur Sinodinos would hope to get the same character reference from ICAC that I got.
All right, we'll find out. Let's move on to the red tape issue. Tony Smith, I'll start with you. Labor are concerned about the removal of some of the provisions in the financial services area of regulation. They have a point, don't they? Why remove a test that basically is in place to try to ensure that financial advice is in the best interest of the client?
Well, that's what they've been saying, and that's what's being reported, but it's not right. The situation is this. The best interest duty remains. It's certainly there in common law, and I can tell you in the legislation there are a number of steps that financial advisors must take, very specific steps to ensure that best interest duty. And then at the end of all those specific steps, there's a catch-all phrase that essentially says, if there's anything else no one's thought of, please do it. I'm putting that in ordinary language. Sure. And it's that clause that is very general and creates a lot of confusion and has the potential to involve a lot of cost. It is just that clause that is being proposed to be removed. But,
well, let me bring you in, Doug Cameron, and ask you about that, because that is the case I did hear, that yes, it looks pretty good on your side of the argument, it has to be said, from a PR perspective. The Liberals want to remove a clause that looks like it's protecting and is worded such to protect the consumer. But there are other clauses in other parts of the legislation, and there is, as Tony Smith says, common law. Is Labor open to negotiation on this?
Well, I don't have any interest in that portfolio, so I can't say about whether there'll be negotiations. But what I can say, when I was involved in the Economics Committee in the Senate, you know, the Coalition's red tape was the protection for investors. And the Coalition's red tape in terms of the environment was environmental protection. So red tape, just to be slung around as some means of improving productivity and making it easier, is just not that simple. And I have to say to you, in relation to the investors of this country, they will be badly served by any move away from Labor's legislation on this.
A lot of the issue, on that, Tony Smith, you answer that, but also answer this to me. A lot of this is a stunt, isn't it, by Josh Frydenberg and the government? I mean, a lot of the regulations that have been removed are regulations that are antiquated. They're not active.
Well, there's a lot of active ones being removed as well. I mean,
Josh Frydenberg couldn't even put it in the hundreds to me. He spruiked that there's, what is it, 8,000 or something that are up. More than 80%, 90% of those fall into the category of redundant legislation. Redundant regulation, rather.
Well, I don't think that'll be right, because the cost savings that he and the Prime Minister have put forward obviously go to active regulations, and some of those examples that are out there, like job network providers not having to keep everything in hard copy and have, you know, more than 300 filing cabinets in one case, universities having to provide the same information over and over again each year when it's obvious it doesn't need to be updated. The example that he has been using of you know, the same movie having to get separate classifications based on whether it's 2D, 3D, digital. I mean, that's real time and real savings. But I think it's...
But those sort of things have been removed by Labor as well. When they were in power, they just didn't make a song and dance about it. They probably regret not now, by the way, because it looks like not a bad PR stunt, but they were doing it too.
I'd make 2 points. They weren't doing that well, because the World Economic Forum's survey on government regulations got us at 128 out of 148, so it wasn't that crash hot. But I'd make another point, Peter, that...
Yeah, but they don't want to regulate. The World Economic Forum don't want any regulation that says big business have to do the right thing.
No. Well, Doug, I understand. I mean, I understand. You want us at 148. That's okay. But we've got a different view.
I want us to have regulation that looks after the environment, looks after investors, looks after the health and safety of workers. And and the point was made. I must say, the point was made by one commentator today that when the red tape bonfire went up, it had a very musty smell because lots of it was just complete nonsense.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to have to let you guys continue that debate off air because we're out of time. But I did have one last question, Doug Cameron, that I wanted to ask you, and it was about Tony Abbott's trip to Manus Island. Is there any chance that the Labor left are going to reclaim the moral high ground in this debate? And by that I mean move away from the bipartisan elements of offshore processing as major party policy?
No, the Labour Party has a strong policy which is to support a regional framework. That's what we've worked hard to do. We put the regional framework in Papua New Guinea, and it was the main criteria that saw a reduction in terms of people being killed. Now, I don't like lots of aspects of it. I don't think anyone in the Labour Party likes many of the aspects that we see, but you have to stop people getting killed at sea. But there are 22 recommendations from the expert panel, and those recommendations should be implemented, and that was the basis that Labour supported the regional framework, and we want all those 22 recommendations implemented by the coalition. And if we can get rid of some of the secrecy, then maybe we can go away to doing that.
All right, gentlemen, we're over time, but I appreciate both your company at the end of another busy sitting week. Doug Cameron and Tony Smith, thanks very much for being there. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Tony.
We're going to take